ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply. Today we're doing a 2.5-year update on Savy's 135 gallon reef tank. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. I know you guys have seen this tank before. It's absolutely gorgeous and it has been growing in like crazy. The tank is really starting to look extremely mature now, and I'm very stoked to see it and get an update on it. So how have you been doing?
Really good. Thanks for coming, Devin. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. So the tank is growing in extremely well. Like, this looks like a very aged, mature tank. You know, all your acros are really nice sizes. The coral looks great. Your light, you know, pristine sand bed. Patched the drywall even since the last time we were here. So, you know, stuff is really looking really pristine. I know in the past we showed off like the custom stand and everything else, and it really does look awesome.
Well, thanks. The drywall happened yesterday, so just to be honest, and there's still some work to do there, yeah. But yes, thank you for noticing that. Yeah, and definitely things are growing in and becoming more mature. I think, as we all know, patience is a part of the hobby, and we probably, and I'm probably the worst one for it, don't have a lot of patience, but really, more and more it does settle in, and looking after the little things seem to allow you to just coast a little more.
Yeah. Do you find you do a lot of maintenance still, or do you find it's fairly kind of set in its groove now? Good
question. I've really tried to maintain what works for me, and that is a regular water change. I do a fairly significant cleaning of the sand bed once a week, water change about 15 to 20% a week, and not a lot more than that. The only major changes I've made really in the last year has been to, you know, more out of curiosity and a little bit because of the nutrient rise, was start to consider a bit of a carbon dosing, and that really came about from some of your presentations with Lou from Tropic Marin.
Yep.
And so far, I think, you know, if I'm just tracking numbers, it looks good, but my eye tells me it also looks pretty good, and so I'm going to continue with that for a while.
Oh, that's awesome. So just out of curiosity, so what are you doing for a carbon dosing?
So we've started with the Tropic Marin NP, which is the first line, I think, Tropic Marin product, which is when you have higher nutrients. I've never been stressed about nutrients that much because our corals never seem to suffer from them, and I do. I've always been a big follower of Ryan from Cunningham's Reef, or Chunningham's Reef, that you do a lot of presentations with him. I really like his the way he manages his tanks, and so for us, I've never been stressed with higher nutrients, but they were starting to climb a little more, and I really like the science. I looked into it a bit more. I like the science behind what the Tropic Marin NP dosing would do as far as providing more nutrients for the corals, less about bringing the numbers down.
Yeah.
And so we started doing that, and as a result, yes, the numbers came down, nutrients and phosphates, which wasn't my real focus, but the corals really seemed to not. There wasn't any sort of negative impact from them, and in fact, more positive. You can see a lot more white growth on a lot of the corals, and so from a physiologic perspective, it made sense. So after being in the hobby a little bit now, I wanted to try something different, and so it seemed reasonable. And so far, anecdotally, I've been very happy with the results.
No, excellent. And I know one of the big kind of like main features, I guess, not even for the nutrients, but it's about feeding your corals, and I think that does go a long way as well.
Yeah, and I think that's you know, a lot of the work you've done, and a lot of the work we see coming out is really pushing the boundaries on that aspect of the hobby, right? Is how can we more benefit the biology of the corals? It's not just about nutrients, and it's not just about nitrates and phosphates, it's how do we utilize those in our tank? And is it just about the numbers, or is it about how we use those numbers? And so definitely I'm more and more interested about that. And this was a bit of my own personal experiment. I didn't take it on because there was something wrong. It was more, you know what, this has been it's a stable tank, almost 3 years now. You know, what can we do just to fine tune things a little bit? And it seemed like a reasonable thing based on the science.
Nope, no, it makes a lot of sense. One other thing I noticed is this area of your tank has changed. It's definitely a little lower than it was before.
Yeah, thanks for noticing. Yeah, this is the long view angle, and I tried to move that yellow tip, which is the large coral that you see there. And as a consequence, I broke off the old rock structure about halfway and ended up having to do a sort of semi-urgent restructure of my scape. And as a consequence, we ended up dropping that whole upper level. And when we started to look at it, we actually were much more happy with it. And I think it actually, you know, for now, we're way more happy with it. I think it kind of brought to light the idea that it's really easy to build your rock structure too high. And even though I knew this at a time, and I still built it too high in spots. And now, even now in other parts of the tank, I'm like, I wish I'd built that rock structure lower. And so this was sort of one of those mistakes that maybe worked out to our advantage. And so, yeah, we brought that whole structure down, and it's really, both Jen and I really like the look of it from the long view more. And it's kind of guiding us on what we're going to do on the far end of the tank as well.
Nice. I 100% agree. From that long end, it gives that kind of slope look, so you kind of see it angling up as you look across the tank, and it gives a lot more depth. Yeah. Which is a really cool look for that end cap. So what's the plan for the other half of the tanks? I know you said you want to mix it up a bit.
Yeah, so for on the far left, we've never really been satisfied with the rock structure to the far left against the overflow. It's been okay, but we've loved the structure in the middle, and now we definitely appreciate the structure on the right more. But now that adjustment's been made on the right, we actually want to see something that maybe is a bit more negative scaped and maybe comes down in height a little more to allow the corals to come up higher. So almost like a horseshoe from top to bottom. Yeah. With a creation of shadow underneath, where we're okay with a deep shadow from an overgrowth of SPS where the fish can dive in and out of. Yep. And so we want to sort of start to maybe consider what that looks like. We don't want to make any dramatic changes because the tank has been so stable for a while. So we're planning that slowly, and obviously we will be working on that structure downstairs for a good while and looking at it and deciding what we want to do. But I think that will be our next step. Nice. For sure. And then I think the big thing is we want to move some more of the corals off the sand. I really like the contrast of more sand against the rock structure, against the black background. Yep. And that means maybe moving on a bit more of our LPS, the hammers and such. And I think moving more SPS dominated, which means I think the one thing we're lacking is maybe a bit more flow. And so I think that's our key piece, is we want to bring a bit more flow to this tank. Nice. So that we're prepared to make that change. Oh,
that's awesome. So slowly leaning more and more towards the SPS heavy tank, a little more flow, a little more sand beds, kind of the next evolution of the progression.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Well, definitely appreciate the update. Your tank is looking fantastic as always. And I know everyone always loves your tank in the comments, so I'm sure you'll get lots of more good love on this one, but it's progressing really well and just goes to show. So weekly water changes, that little bacteria dosing, keep your numbers stable, and the tank's definitely thriving. All right, guys, as always, if you enjoyed that, hit that like button if you're new, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.